Look around the room you are in right now. 4 walls, a roof, maybe some insulation you have never actually seen but trust is there. You picked this place because of the rent or the school district, or because it was the only thing available. But 30,000 years ago, choosing the wrong shelter was not an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. Your Ice Age ancestors had no home improvement stores, no building codes, no YouTube tutorials, just killing cold, whatever materials they could scavenge, and a brain chemistry identical to yours. So, they built things that sound completely insane when you first hear about them. Houses made entirely of bones, shelters dug into frozen ground so hard it would break modern tools, structures so sophisticated that when archaeologists first found them, they refused to believe humans built them without metal, without wheels, without written plans. By the end of this, you will see why the place you are sitting in right now feels like an absolute miracle, thanks to revelations about our Ice Age ancestors' incredible ingenuity. First, let us kill the most persistent myth about Ice Age humans. Say Ice Age shelter, and most people picture the same thing. A dark cave, maybe some animal skins on the floor, a small fire, everyone huddled together hoping to see morning. That image, mostly wrong. Caves were used, sure, but they were never the main solution. And here is why. Caves are where the predators live. Cave bears, cave lions, hyenas, they had the same idea you did. A cave is a defensible position with natural shelter from wind and snow, which means you are not moving into vacant real estate. You are trying to evict a 900-kilogram cave bear that considers this home. Some groups did it successfully, many did not. The archaeological record is full of human remains mixed with predator remains in cave sites, and it is not always clear who was living there and who was dinner. Beyond the danger, there is a practical problem. There are not that many caves. Ice Age Europe had huge populations spread across thousands of kilometers. The math does not work. If everyone needed a cave, most people would freeze. So, they built. And what they built was so creative, so precisely engineered for extreme conditions, that modern survival experts study these techniques today. Let me show you 5 of the most extraordinary shelters they actually used. Here is the first one, and it starts with a simple question. If the air above ground is lethal, why stay above ground? At a site called Terra Amata in southern France, archaeologists found oval depressions about 7.9 to 14.9 meters long and 4.0 to 6.1 meters wide. These were not natural formations. Tool marks along the edges proved they were deliberately excavated. The same thing happened at Bilzingsleben in Germany, with sites dating back 370,000 years, showing evidence of intentional digging below the surface. Why dig when you could just build up? Because 1.8 to 2.4 meters below the surface, the ground temperature stays 11 to 17 degrees Celsius warmer than the air. Even in the middle of winter, the Earth itself becomes your heating system. Picture the work involved here. You are in Ice Age Europe, no backhoe. The ground is partially frozen. You have stone hand axes, antler picks, and wooden digging sticks, and you need to move tons of soil and rock to create a pit large enough for your family. But here is what truly astounds me. They did not just dig random holes. Archaeological evidence shows these pits were excavated to very specific depths, not 5 meters, not 3.0 meters, but consistently between 1.8 and 2.4 meters, across multiple sites, separated by thousands of kilometers and thousands of years. They knew, somehow, without thermometers, they had figured out the exact depth where the thermal advantage maximized. Dig too shallow, you are still cold. Dig too deep, you are wasting energy for minimal gain. Once the pit was dug, they built structures inside, wooden posts supporting a roof of branches covered with hides and turf. The pit walls blocked wind, the earth radiated stored heat. A small fire in the center would keep the interior habitable, even when the outside world was frozen solid. Modern military cold-weather survival training now teaches this exact technique. Dig down, build small, use the Earth's thermal mass. Techniques we discovered in the 20th century that were standard practice 300,000 years ago. Okay, this next one sounds made up. I am just warning you. At a site called Mammoth-bone in Ukraine, archaeologists in 1965 uncovered something that stopped them cold. a circular structure about 4.9 meters in diameter, built entirely from the bones of woolly mammoths. Not partially, not supplemented with bone, entirely bone. The foundation, mammoth skulls, each weighing 90 to 136 kilograms, arranged in a circle. The walls, interlocking mammoth bones, femurs, ribs, vertebrae, fitted together like puzzle pieces. The roof frame, massive mammoth tusks, some over 3.0 meters long, curved into a dome shape. The whole structure was held together by its own weight and careful engineering, then covered with multiple layers of mammoth hides stitched together. One house required the bones of approximately 95 mammoths. 95 mammoths. Either they were extremely patient hunters, or more likely, they were scavenging bones from natural die-off sites where mammoths had been accumulating for generations. Either way, hauling that much material, we are talking tens of thousands of kilograms of bone, required organization, labor cooperation, and planning on a scale we usually do not associate with Stone Age people. But here is the crazy part. In the 1980s, a team of researchers actually built a full-scale replica of one of these mammoth bone houses using the same construction techniques and materials. Then, they tested it in winter conditions. Inside temperature with a modest fire, 16 to 21 degrees Celsius. Outside temperature, 0.20 degrees Celsius. A temperature difference of 36 to 41 degrees Celsius, maintained by bone structure and fire alone. For context, modern insulated homes with electric heating aim for roughly the same performance level. These were not desperate survival shelters. They were engineered residences, and the people who built them understood load distribution, thermal retention, and structural stability at a level that would not look out of place in a modern architecture program. By the way, these houses had storage pits dug beneath them, decorative items placed intentionally, and evidence of continuous occupation through multiple winters. People lived in these, raised children in these, told stories, made art, and repaired tools, all inside a house made of bones. Not every group stayed in one place. Some Ice Age populations were highly mobile, following migrating herds of reindeer or bison across hundreds of kilometers. For them, building a mammoth bone house was not practical. They needed something they could carry. Enter the portable tent shelter, and these were far more sophisticated than you might think. At Pinsevent in France, archaeologists found patterns of post holes and stone rings dating to about 12,000 years ago. The post holes were arranged in circles and ovals with hearths in the center and stone weights around the perimeter. They reconstructed what these structures would have looked like: conical or dome-shaped frames made from wooden poles covered with reindeer hides. But here is the detail that shows you how well they understood their environment. The hides were not just thrown over the frame, they were layered. The innermost layer had the fur facing inward, trapping warm air against human bodies. The middle layer had fur facing outward, shedding wind and moisture. The outer layer was sometimes treated with fat or resins to make it more waterproof. 3-layer composite insulation, each layer serving a specific function. This is the same principle behind modern technical outdoor clothing, developed independently 12,000 years ago, because necessity does not wait for Gore-Tex. These shelters could be assembled in under an hour, disassembled just as quickly, and the hides could be rolled up and transported to the next camp. The wooden poles could be replaced from local materials. The whole system was modular, portable, and refined over thousands of years of trial and error. There is a reason modern nomadic people in Arctic and subarctic regions, the Sami, the Nenets, the Inuit, independently developed nearly identical shelter designs. The physics of heat retention in extreme cold do not change. Figure it out once and you have solved it forever. Some groups found natural rock overhangs, not quite caves, more like the underside of a cliff face, and then modified them into legitimate shelters. At Abric Romani in Spain, archaeologists uncovered a rock shelter used repeatedly over 20,000 years. Each occupation layer showed evidence of modification. They were not just camping under a rock, they were building stone walls across the open side, creating an enclosed space. Wooden posts supported extended roofs that projected beyond the natural overhang. Hearths were positioned strategically to maximize heat reflection off the rock face. Sleeping areas were deliberately placed in zones where reflected heat would concentrate overnight. One site in France, Grotte du Renne, showed evidence of a rock shelter where occupants had actually modified the rock itself, breaking off protruding stones to smooth the walls, digging drainage channels to prevent water accumulation, and even carving small niches into the rock face for storage. This is something we see over and over in Ice Age archaeology. They did not just use what nature gave them. They improved it, adapted it, engineered solutions to specific problems, and they taught these solutions to the next generation, who taught the next, creating technological traditions that lasted longer than all of recorded human history. Yes, they built igloos, or at least Ice Age equivalents. In Siberia, at sites like Yana and Barelik, dating to 30,000 years ago, archaeologists found evidence of temporary shelters built partially from compacted snow and ice blocks. Now, these were not the sophisticated domed igloos perfected by the Inuit much later. These were simpler, snow-piled and compacted into walls, sometimes reinforced with branches or bones, with animal hide roofs. Why would you build with snow when you are trying to stay warm? For the same reason modern survival manuals teach it, snow is an excellent insulator. The air pockets trapped between ice crystals create dead airspace, which slows heat transfer. A properly built snow shelter can maintain interior temperatures 17 to 22 degrees Celsius, warmer than outside, even without fire. And in the treeless Arctic steppe, where wood and bone were sometimes scarce, snow was the most abundant building material available. Infinite supply, zero transportation cost, and naturally replaced after every storm. The downside: snow shelters require constant maintenance. They melt from interior heat, collapse under new snowfall, and need to be rebuilt regularly. But for mobile hunting groups, spending a few nights in one location before moving on, they were perfect. Quick to build, effective enough to keep you alive, and you do not have to carry anything. Modern mountaineers, Arctic researchers, and military cold weather units still use these techniques. Snow caves, quinzees, emergency bivouacs, same physics, same solutions. Here is what we skip over when we say they built shelters. Building a semi-subterranean pit house, 2 to 3 weeks of full-time labor by 8 to 10 adults. Gathering materials for a mammoth-bone house, possibly years of opportunistic scavenging or coordinated hunting expeditions that would make modern logistics managers weep. Preparing animal hides for shelter coverings, weeks of scraping, treating, drying, and stitching per hide, and you needed dozens. All of this had to be completed before the worst of winter set in, which means planning. Seasonal calendars in their heads, resource management, labor coordination. And if you got it wrong, if you started too late, if your shelter design was flawed, if you miscalculated the materials you needed, you did not get a second chance. Winter does not wait. There are no Ice Age documents, no written records of how they organized this labor, how they made decisions, how they taught construction techniques to the next generation. But the archaeological evidence makes it clear they succeeded. For hundreds of thousands of years, in some of the most hostile environments humans have ever faced, they built, they survived, and they did it with nothing but stone tools and human ingenuity. Here is the part that is almost embarrassing. For most of the 20th century, archaeologists and anthropologists assumed Ice Age people were living on the edge of survival, barely making it, primitive, struggling. Then we actually started testing their techniques. In 2009, a team of experimental archaeologists built a full-scale Ice Age pit house in Germany using only Stone Age tools and materials. The project took 3 weeks. The structure performed better than expected, maintaining comfortable interior temperatures through a modern winter. In the 1980s, as I mentioned, Russian researchers built the Mammoth-bone house replica. It worked flawlessly. Modern Arctic survival programs now teach shelter techniques derived directly from Ice Age archaeological sites. The U.S. military's Cold Weather Operations Manual includes instructions for semi-subterranean shelters, layered insulation, and earth-integrated structures. All techniques our ancestors perfected 30,000 years ago. We did not improve on their designs. We rediscovered them, gave them new names, and acted like we had invented something. Look around your room again. Those 4 walls, that roof, the insulation you have never seen. Somebody delivered the materials. Somebody else built it, probably in a few weeks, using power tools and a set of plans printed on paper. You moved in, set the thermostat, and forgot about it. The shelter you are in right now represents about 0.01% of your mental energy on any given day. For your Ice Age ancestors, shelter was everything. It determined survival. It required the coordinated labor of entire communities. It took weeks or months to build, and constant effort to maintain. And they did it, generation after generation, in conditions that would kill most modern humans in a single night. They did not do it because they were tougher than you. They did it because they had no choice, and because the human brain, your brain, is capable of extraordinary things when survival depends on it. The bones in Ukrainian museums, the pit house depressions in France, the stone rings at abandoned campsites in Spain, these are not just archaeological curiosities. They are proof that humans have always been builders, engineers, problem solvers. We have always looked at impossible conditions and figured out a way. You inherited that ability. It is in you right now, the same as it was in them. You have just never had to use it, and honestly, that is not something to feel guilty about. That is something to be grateful for. Because every time you adjust your thermostat without thinking, you are experiencing something your ancestors would have considered magic. Warmth without effort. They built the knowledge, we built the systems, and somewhere in between, we forgot how astonishing it is that we are not freezing to death right now. The next time winter comes and you reach for that thermostat, take 1 second, just one, and remember the mammoth-bone houses, the pit dwellings dug into frozen earth, the portable shelters carried across continents, the snow walls built by firelight. Remember what it actually took to be warm, and understand, maybe for the first time, how extraordinary it is that you do not have to think about it anymore.